Okay, welcome all you wonderful people to another episode of Continue Freedom. Thanks so much for being here. I want to ask you, if you don't mind, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and share this video. It would really, really help us out with the algorithm. But leave comments below. I want to know your thoughts on some of this stuff. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give a quick disclaimer. This is kind of troubling. We're going to talk about, in the early part of this episode, talk about some things that are very hard to hear. So if you got kids around, make sure that they're not really around. I'm not going to go into graphic detail about this, but it's talking about some things that are very disturbing, and it's with Patrick Bet-David. He had an interview that, though it got 1 million views, not nearly one of his largest videos, I think it's probably one of the most important interviews that he's done in a very long time, because it highlights a topic that it's at the forefront of a lot of our news feeds, but not everybody, not enough. When we look at our southern border with 300,000 kids missing, he interviewed a lady, and her name was Anneke Lucas. And Anneke Lucas was trafficked as a young child, starting at 9 years old. And she went through years for over a decade, I guess. I think she got out when she was in her late teens, early 20s. She was finally able to escape that life. But she interacted with people that I'm going to give you the names here in a minute, but these are huge people in our country, power players across the globe. And she interacted with these folks in these child sex trafficking rings. And it is like, her stories were horrific. And I implore you to go watch the video. Not yet, but I'm going to give you some pointers, and you're going to need to go watch this full video, because the parts of it were contentious. Parts of it were, it's almost too big to even understand, but she named some names, and we're going to talk about those names. I mean, it was huge, but this is a gargantuan problem here in America. We are one of the number one destinations for child trafficking, and we've got over 300,000 children missing from our southern border that have undoubtedly moved into this trafficking ring. And it's being augmented in some cases by nonprofits. It's being augmented by our own federal government. It's being subsidized by our own federal government. By our tax dollars are going into these things. And I'm wildly passionate about this, because along with abortion, these are two of the biggest issues that our country is facing today. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the transgender movement, which kind of gets into this, this sexualizing of a country. Everything becomes about sex. It becomes about, the physicality of your sexual preference, all of this. And I'm going to harken back briefly. You might not be a Christian, but I am going to give a historical reference from the Bible that talks about this and how that impacts our justice system. And I swear I'm going to knit all this together into a story for you. But we'll talk about that, as well as a whole host of other things in the news that are going on. But let's go ahead and get into this first one. So, as I said before, Anneke Lucas, she did a 2-hour podcast with Patrick Bet-David. And if you aren't aware of Patrick Bet-David, I want you to come here to Continue Freedom, but he's another channel that would augment your knowledge, your building of your knowledge of the world today, because he's getting on some of the biggest guests that are some of the most impactful guests that are appearing on podcasts here in 2024 and as we move into 2025. And he's going to continue to grow. So definitely go and give him a follow, and I'm going to want you to watch that video. But I'm going to give an example here. We always a lot of Christians talk about America today being a modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. That's the most, I guess, impactful example that we can give from the Bible, because Sodom and Gomorrah had gotten so bad that God chose to destroy them. And it's interesting, in Genesis 18, the Lord said, "If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Then Abraham, this is Abraham having a conversation with God, spoke up again and said, "Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of righteous is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5 people?" And he goes on. He went from 45 to 30 to 20 to 10, and he says, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." And this actually set the stage for what we use today. I don't know if you all have heard of Blackstone's ratio, but it's better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man goes to prison. And with that in mind, it's why I believe that we are not in Sodom and Gomorrah territory yet as this country, because an overwhelming majority do not support. They don't support the trafficking of children. They don't support the transgender movement and men competing against women and all of that, which we're going to get into in a minute. But I just kind of wanted to frame that in that perspective. And so I also want us to keep in mind, before I start talking about this in greater detail, that after multiple deployments, I've been overseas multiple times. I've encountered, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and all of these people on foreign soil. We have got to stop putting limits on human depravity. So when you hear these things, a lot of people are dismissive and they say, no, this is bunk. That's ridiculous. There's not a cabal of people out here doing this. These billionaires aren't doing this. These people would never do that. They are higher. They are sophisticated. They are better. And I will tell you, I have seen some horrific things. I've seen men selling mentally handicapped women so that they could put suicide vests on them, send them into a bazaar to blow them up. I've seen young boys, 12, 13, 14 years old, the age wasn't necessarily known in this instance, with a suicide vest into a bazaar to blow people up. Young girls, 4, 5, 6 years old, having closed fist strikes from men right in the face just so they could take a pink backpack full of colored pencils. Don't put limits on human depravity. Humans are capable of some horrific things, and we think that just because Nazi Germany was destroyed that all of a sudden human depravity stopped. That's not the case. So stop putting limits on depravity. Stop thinking at the same time that people with more money and more power and influence are better than you. They aren't. They are not better than you. They are not superior to you. They are just people. And you have to remember that when, there's the old saying, and I forget who said it, but power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. When they get into their insulated world, they aren't impacted by, inflation. That doesn't really matter to them. What's a few million? They lose a little bit here. Their money's covered. They're always going to have their power. They're going to have their money. Look for a different guide other than Taylor Swift or Sting or whatever entertainer, I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter. Pick your celebrity. Pick someone else as your role model and as your example. And I recommend Christ, obviously, but find something that is more pure to latch onto. Find a set of principles to latch onto. The Bible does a really good job at it. I'll just go ahead and give my disclaimer on that one. But don't latch onto these insulated people with power and fame, because some of them, not all, but some of them are consumed by an evil that you cannot possibly fathom. And a person who experienced that evil was Anneke Lucas. And in this interview, it was interesting because she named some names that are gargantuan, absolutely gargantuan. One of the names that she named, David Rockefeller. Who is David Rockefeller? Well, you know the name of the family. Everybody knows the Rockefeller family. This guy is a billionaire. And she said that this was one of the men who trafficked her in her teenage years and wanted to build her up as this personality to use as leverage, to put people in compromising situations. And this was years of her life, by the way. Took her to his penthouses and to his homes, his multiple homes all over the world, and used her, essentially as a sex slave. David Rockefeller was a big name, but Pierre Trudeau, the father of Justin Trudeau, was another huge name that and again, her experience with him, I'm going to leave it to you to go and watch the video, was horrific. And to the point, I will say that she told Mr. Rockefeller, when she reported back after these encounters with him, that she could not please this man so long as she was alive. And her thought was that he sought to have a child to unalive. I mean, this is, again, these are horrific things. This is why I told you don't have kids in the room. She mentioned the Chancellor of Germany back in the 70s. She had an encounter with him. She talked about Hollywood icons. In this instance, she didn't name names. She said that this is a person now in their 80s that was all part of this trafficking ring. She is doing her part, Anneke is, to bring other women who have been in this life, to bring them out, to help them transition out. But it went on and on, from Italy to New York to Paris to Belgium, traveled the world for these evil, sadistic people who have more money than they know what to do with. This is why money doesn't buy you happiness, but I'm sure it helps, but money doesn't buy you happiness. But this is the depravity that exists, and we've got 300,000 kids, by the way, coming across our southern border. But these are world leaders. These are business, like magnates in the business world. And she named them all. She didn't want to. Patrick Bet-David at times, to his, I believe, his discredit, he has looked at some of these families. I know that I've heard him talk about the Rockefellers before. And his pushback, I get why he wanted to push back, but it's almost like he couldn't believe it. He couldn't grasp it, that this guy was doing this to her. And pushing her, I think, was a good thing, because it pulls out if there's any, BS existent, but in her story. But the response was so raw, so emotional, so detailed, and so specific. This was not a lie. I do not believe that this was a lie. She also mentioned the Rothchilds, by the way. So if you followed any of the conspiracy theorists, as they like to call us, the Rothschilds and all of their involvement in the goings-on of the world and manipulating world leaders and business leaders, the Rothschilds were a key component of this. Not that they were necessarily doing the trafficking, but they were the ones giving approval to the Bilderberg folks, to the, if you want to look at Bohemian Grove and the rituals and all this sort of stuff. She brought up all of these things and talked about them in detail, year by year. It was unbelievable. And this is one that I believe should have had, at the very least, 10 million views. Because this shows the depravity at the higher levels of the most powerful country in the world, and the cabal that is seeking to influence the world. And it's always around the sexualization of people. It's the corrupting power of that sort of thing. And it's why they're asking us to, so I'm going to move on from that one, but it's almost in the same vein, but go on to talk about the transgender movement. The transgender movement is a sexualization movement. This is about sexual proclivities, about sexual preference. And this is why I say we're not at a Sodom and Gomorrah moment, because there's a vast swath of the American population that says, I'm not buying into this mess. And teams like this, like Boise State, standing up and saying, no, we're not going to go off and compete against men in women's sports. Boise State's, this is from the Post-Millennial, Boise State's women's volleyball team won their match against Utah State Wednesday evening in the Mountain West Volleyball Championship. However, instead of facing off against San Jose State University and trans-identified male player Blair Fleming, the team is withdrawn from the competition. In a statement, Boise State Athletics said, the decision is not to continue to play in the 2024 Mountain West Volleyball Championship tournament. This was not an easy one. Our team overcame forfeitures to earn a spot in the tournament field that fought for the win over Utah State in the first round on Wednesday. They should not have to forego this opportunity while waiting for a more thoughtful and better system that serves all athletes. Now, you may be a person who says, look, let's be inclusive. Just be inclusive. That's all it takes. Be inclusive. And to that, I will remind you of this young girl. This young girl who has suffered permanent head and neck injuries because of an incident that she had, which was highlighted by the person who's really fighting this more than anybody, is Riley Gaines, unbelievable spokesperson for this. And I'm going to play you the video just to remind you. Watch this. Down here, focus, focus, focus. Bam! Girl was laid out cold because a guy spiked a volleyball into her face. Muddying the waters, causing confusion. This is all in the same vein of what we were talking about before. It's a depravity. I'm not saying that people with gender dysphoria are depraved. I'm saying that the social movements are. It's messed up. So kudos to this volleyball team, to the Boise State for saying, nope, we're not going to do it. Because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take these sports teams, these women's teams, standing up and saying, you know what? We built a team together. We went out here and we did the work. We put in the work. We put in the effort. We went the extra mile. We were a cohesive team. That takes effort to overcome all of everybody's idiosyncrasies, everybody's issues. Everything's got to be even keel. You got to be getting along. You got to be working hard. You got to be working towards the same goal. They put in all this work. They fostered that teamwork. And what does one team say? Well, we can get by it with the rules to put a dude in here, higher muscle density, or higher muscle mass, bone density, height, strength, testosterone, all of this stuff, and it gives us a competitive advantage. And what the left and all the people pushing that say is, well, it's wrong if you go against that. We got to be inclusive. We have to be inclusive. It's just so messed up. I don't buy into that. Let me know what you guys think about it. Do you think that it's a good idea for men to be involved in women's athletics? I would really love to know who out there believes that's a good idea. I don't know anybody that would think that. So they're up to some other funny business, I guess you could say. The Thanksgiving Day parade, down to the holidays. We got to make everything a big issue. You got to speak out against Israel, by the way. So I think it's fitting that I was quoting Genesis, and now we're talking about anti-Israel protesters being arrested for blocking the procession of the Thanksgiving Day parade. Now I don't watch the Thanksgiving Day parade anymore. Everything's become too woke. The first time I saw drag queens or whatever it was that were in there, I said, nope, I'm turning it off. I'm not even going to watch it. Not that I really enjoyed it. It was always one of those things in our house that we had kind of playing in the background, but. For the second year in a row, a throng of anti-Israel protesters attempted to hijack the annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, but their plans were interrupted when members of the New York Police Department descended on them and broke up the demonstration, arresting those who interrupted the annual event. Well, now that people had spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to have these monstrous floats and these big productions and all that kind of stuff, they'll step in and do it there, but they won't step in and do it when they're blocking a main thoroughfare somewhere in New York. We've seen countless videos of that. But maybe, I guess that's what it takes. I guess the money's got to be involved. But kudos to the to the NYPD for stepping in and breaking this up. But videos showed the protesters sitting on the ground in front of the parade, waving a huge banner that stated, "Don't celebrate genocide." The NYPD took swift action as they shackled many who did not want to move as they continued to shout, "Free, free Palestine." Oh, these silly kids. What are they doing for a living, by the way? If you've got time to go out here and sit in the road, that's always been my question. Like, what? Some of these, a lot of them are being paid. I'm sure being paid by George Soros and other folks that just hate the Jewish people. But what in the world are you doing for a living? Do you have the time to do these sorts of things, to be a career protester? I'm going to assume that there's some government assistance involved in that. That would be my first guess. Oh, gracious sakes alive. But you can't mess with the Macy's Day Parade. Kudos to the NYPD for taking care of that. Now, let's go ahead and talk to some of the commentary going on the left. And Joy Reid is oh boy, she's going to be in trouble because MSNBC and CNN and all of these outlets are going nuts. In my last video, I was talking about Elon Musk. I guess the rumor on the internet is that he's considering buying MSNBC. I don't know if he would actually do it. But I think that him buying it, shutting down all these woke programs, people like Joy Reid, she's an unabashed racist. She's one of the most racist people on television. But because she's a black woman, it's okay for her to be racist against white people. This is the way they approach this, right? If you're black, you can't be racist against a white person. If you're white, most of the things that you do, your mere existence is racist against black people, even though that's utterly ridiculous. But MSNBC host Joy Reid issued a bitter and vindictive Thanksgiving Day rant Thursday, in which she claimed it was conservatives, not liberals, who rely on victimhood. Oh, that's an interesting concept. Conservatives talking about victimhood. But to press their issues, and they can do Thanksgiving by themselves this year after the stunning victory of President-elect Donald Trump. So in a quote by her, she said, "So there is this strong dual energy among MAGA people, and they're apologists, and it actually fits quite neatly with the history of America. It's quite equal parts bully energy, where they want to relentlessly troll liberals and lash out at minorities, and a victim energy, where those same liberals are supposed to take the trolling quietly and also pity the trolls. It's the eternal victimhood of the conservative. We need to constantly coddle, study, and understand them, she said sarcastically. What in the... See, this is how you know. These folks don't live in our world. They really don't. They don't live in the world of the average American. They are entirely insulated. So why in the world would we take somebody this insulated and put them on TV and have? Why would you take why would you get your opinions from somebody that lives in this insulated of a life, or that lives this insulated of a life? I can't imagine why somebody would turn on Joy Reid and think, yes, that's going to be my opinion. You know, there's a Twitter commentator. That's all she does. And she profits off of Twitter, but then, you know, bashes Elon Musk and conservatives, And her name's JoJo from Jers. She's just called Joe on X. And this is the most vile, disgusting, hateful messaging you've ever seen on a social media account. And it's like, what, you know, she was bashing paycheck to paycheck people. That it's because of those stupid paycheck to paycheck people. I was like, wait a second. You realize that there's a lot of people on the left that are living paycheck to paycheck too. People that voted for not Joe Biden, but Kamala Harris, that are living paycheck to paycheck. She vilifies them because she's making a ton of money online, just spouting garbage. Joy Reid does the same thing. She just has a nicer camera. She spouts all this nonsense about, oh, it's the conservatives who say they're victims. Meanwhile, every single episode that Joy Reid has released at some point has talked about her victimhood. You know, the woman with, I'm assuming not assuming, I know it's at least a 7-figure contract, if not an 8-figure contract, wearing Gucci, wearing all of her expensive clothes and her expensive jewelry, driving around in her nice car, got car service, all that stuff. She's the victim. This is what they do. They try to flip the script on us. When they lose, they try to flip the script, and all the things that they have accused us of, us being conservatives, they themselves are actually doing. They're the sorest of sore losers, but this is manipulation. This is nothing more than manipulation. Don't fall for it. I know you guys won't, but tell your friends, tell your family, don't fall for it. And I will say, though, that this election, this has been an eye-opener for them, I believe. And Dems are mad because they got killed in alternative media, quote, that's their quote, as they seek to replace Turning Point USA, Daily Wire, and all these other outlets. They say, we need our own Daily Wire. We need our own Turning Point USA. Well, let me revert back to the story we just had. Your version of that is Joy Reid. If you were to create, if the left were to create an alternative, the Daily Wire, to Turning Point USA, it would be MSNBC. They already have that. It's just the American people don't want it. So they're trying to create something that is it's not enticing to the American people. It's not something the American people are craving. They don't want that because the left's message has been ever since 2016 has been Donald Trump is bad. That's it. You've got plenty of people saying that. Starting a new podcast or a new advocacy organization like TPUSA, that's not going to help you. That doesn't help the left. They're just going to repeat the same thing that Joy Reid is repeating. They say they need their own Joe Rogan. You had Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was a guy on the left, and you left him in your dust as you cruise towards wokeism and away from the American people. That's why I think that, you know, Elon Musk buying MSNBC and having actual journalists, people that just report the facts. There was, you know, I was talking about this, or Jeremy on Braver Than the Rest. If you haven't seen Braver Than the Rest, you need to go watch it. We did an episode this past Wednesday, and he said, you know, what happened to the Dan Rathers of the world and these old school journalists who just wanted to report the facts? And it was, there was a hurricane that hit Florida. Not that there was a hurricane that hit Florida, and the response was racist, and it was all because of climate change, and it was, you know, interjecting all these opinions into things. Just give people the facts, let them make their own determination and decide which direction they want the politics to move. But Democrats are unhappy about their electoral loss, and they're still trying to figure out how it happened. This is from the Post-Millennial. They have blamed voters, pollsters, Joe Biden, each other, and now they have decided their lack of alternative media is the parallel economy model of, lack of alternative media in the parallel economy model of the right is to blame. Quote, "We got killed in alternative media," said Stuart Perlmutter in a new article from the New York Times. Perlmutter has been contemplating some kind of alternative dim influencer group. Republicans have been investing in that space for years, and on the left, we have treated creators who are not in legacy media as gig workers. This is the thing. Like you can't. You can try. It's not going to take off because you've got the Young Turks. The Young Turks are wild leftists. Even though Anneke Lucas has made some moves towards not towards the right, but towards the middle at the very least, and said, no, this wokeism stuff isn't working. Cenk is still a wild leftist. He'll kind of do these cursory, he'll shun the Democrat Party for, oh, they did this, they're latched onto the big businesses and all of his normal stuff. But at the end of the day, he's a socialist. He's a leftist, a straight up leftist. So he's trying to make the plea to the people who don't agree with the mainstream Democrat Party to say, hey, come over here. But at the end of the day, his policies are going to align with Joe Biden. His policies are going to align with Kamala Harris. His policies are going to align with the mainstream Democrat Party, which is the party of wokeism. On the other hand, this is the counterculture. The conservatives are the counterculture. We're the ones saying, you know what? That this is where the mainstream media is trying to drive us. And Ben Shapiro, though I don't like Ben Shapiro all that much, he's not my favorite commentator. I mean, I think he serves a invaluable purpose. I don't enjoy listening to Ben Shapiro as much as I used to. Charlie Kirk, I still like a lot of his stuff, but this is the constitutional wing of the Republican Party. It's not the old school Republican Party. And this is rapidly becoming the counterculture. This is why they're bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars in support and subscriptions and all of that. This is why they're driving this new change in politics, because that's what people are craving. They say, we got to get back to the Constitution. We got to get back to some sort of common sense. And I think Charlie Kirk does a much better job of that than just about anybody out there. Come on. They're not going to come up with their own Joe Rogan or their own Ben Shapiro. Cenk is their Ben Shapiro, and he sucks. He's terrible. He's absolutely terrible. Because at the end of the day, Cenk can say, oh, I'm for the little guy. He's a millionaire. Cenk's a millionaire. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But he's gotten millions from big business guys. He got millions of dollars from Buddy Roemer. He's gotten millions of dollars from all these other investors. So on one hand, he's criticizing it. On the other hand, he's like, yeah, I'll take your money. And then they put up people like Gavin Newsom, who's, he's slumming it in his $9.1 million mansion. He kept his $3.7 million mansion, by the way, but he moved into his new $9.1 million mansion. So this is, from the Post-Millennial. California Governor Gavin Newsom, his Thanksgiving Day message backfired on Thursday when many claimed his recent $9.1 million mansion purchase showed he was out of touch with everyday Golden Staters. Newsom is moving his family into the new mansion while keeping the old $3.7 million mansion in Fair Oaks as well. Newsom and his wife, Jennifer, made the multi-million-dollar purchase of the new home in Kentfield, Martin County, California, earlier this week before he released what some have slammed as a fake message of humility. Oh, my goodness. Some of the comments, I wanted to find these. So one person commented, as you destroy the finances of the state of California, another person wrote, how is slumming it in your $9.1 million mansion? Where did the money come from? You have no business or accounting sensibilities. So was it the cartels, the Gettys, money laundering from the $24 billion in missing homeless funds? This is the question, right? With the left, where does the money come from? Nancy Pelosi's worth, I think she's hit $300 million now on a $180,000 a year salary. Where does the money come from? Corruption, 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 corruption. And we are catching up, though. We are catching up to some of our brothers and sisters abroad, because this leftist movement, it's a train that people think that Donald Trump is just going to stop it, and that's not the case. That train's going to keep rolling. It's going to keep on going. Well, it's why we have to continue to be engaged. We have to stay aware of what's going on around us. And it's going to be in the legislation. They're going to, this is what Donald Trump will be. We're not going to have to worry about it, I don't think, in the next 4 years. In the next 2 years. But we'll see what happens when we, have our midterm elections. That those never fare well for the incumbent, especially after there's been a groundswell like we've seen. But we've got 2 years. Hopefully we can get a lot done in 2 years. But the type of thing that we're going to be fending off is this. It's happening in the UK. The UK and this end-of-life garbage. These are dying bills. They've already got it in Canada. It's coming to the UK. It will be coming to America. It's already here in America, by the way. In Oregon, I believe, is the state that has it right now. There may be another one, maybe D.C., but British lawmakers have taken significant steps towards legalizing assisted dying for terminally ill adults in England and Wales, passing the bill with a vote of 330 to 275. Remember that there's still a movement in the UK trying to move people towards the right, and they were still able to get something like this passed. Now, there's a lot of moral arguments about this, and I approach it from a biblical perspective, if I'm being perfectly honest. But think of healthcare in general. When we start seeing things like a dying bill, assisted suicide, this is taking a doctor from a healing agent, from a person of healing, a profession of healing, into a profession of death as well. So when you go to a doctor, this is the sort of thing that could be getting pitched to you, especially if you're in Oregon or Washington or California or these other states where assisted suicide, and I'm saying Washington and California because I'm fairly certain they have that, but I'm not 100% certain. And so this is forever altering the profession of physician. When they take the Hippocratic Oath, first of all, do no harm. Now we're saying, well, we'll try not to do any harm, but in the worst case scenario, we'll give you some drugs so that you can expire, and so that our healthcare system won't have to pay for you anymore. But this is a moral abomination to force doctors into this, and that's the fight that people like the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, Christian Medical and Dental Association, they are going to have to fight this fight, and are continuing to fight this fight for the soul of not just the American people, but more specifically the soul of physicians and their right of conscience. A physician in a medical group shouldn't be forced to give drugs that expire a person in the comfort of their own home, because that now says that a doctor can play a part in the profitability of a hospital group, because this person may have some terminal illness, and they say, well, it's a whole lot cheaper to give them a pill that will make them expire, or a series of pills that will make them expire, as opposed to treating them over the long term. That is dicey territory we do not want our doctors, our physicians, to be in. But that's the one that is coming to America. It will come to the federal level, mark my words. The same as transgenderism. When people look at transgender, oh, come on, we'd never have. They said this during, when the talk of gay marriage and all this sort of thing, that, it would never happen. It's never going to happen that we're going to have, men and women intermingling in sports and that sort of thing. Oh, you're ridiculous. You're a conspiracy theorist. Well, here we are. Decades later, I'm letting you know now, this is on the horizon for America. And they will pitch it as freedom and liberty and the right to take your own life and this, that, and the other. But we have to think about the medical profession in and of itself. We are corrupting it when we give them this type of authority, when we give them an option to allow the person. And this is the difference between medical assistance in dying and assisted suicide. It's actually two different things. So medical MAID is what they call it in Canada. But that is saying, here, I'm going to give you something and you take the action. It's helping you, commit your own suicide. Medical assistance in dying medically assisted suicide is really what Dr. Kevorkian was doing, where the physician is actually injecting the person so that they can expire. So it's the physician taking the life versus the person taking their own life. And that's where it gets into dicey territory. But when you put a prescription from a physician, and they sell it, by the way, maybe, have you ever thought about this? There's horror stories out of Canada. Coming to have you ever thought about this? I know that there's 6 months that you've probably got left to live. 80% of those predictions, by the way, are wrong. In many instances, the people continue to live for years after the fact. But they say, well, when your life, you probably only got 6 months. Think of your family. Think of the burden that you're going to become. Wouldn't it be better just to end it all? They save the money, the treatment, the insurance companies win, the medical groups win, everybody wins financially. This is just be aware of it. That's all I'm going to say. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. I love you guys. Make sure that you hit the like button, the comment button. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Hopefully, if you made it 30 minutes into this video, that you've hit that subscribe button. But I truly appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless you. God bless America. Let's stay informed.